We are.
All right, beautiful. So session T12, peripherals and connectors. All right, at the end of this particular T session, you should be able to define the role and purpose and types of peripherals. We kind of briefly glossed over this in the introduction to computers with regards to input, output, and both input output devices. We're going to get into that a little bit more here today. Just give you a little bit broader list of them, the different types of connectors that they use to interact with the particular computer, not just through Bluetooth, but also infrared and various other means, physical connectors, and the different types of them. We're going to identify these cables and predominantly what they're used for, though that is an evolving medium, and also understand, as we have stated before, this information is about 3 to 4 years old because that's about how long ago it was when they wrote the exams. Some of the stuff has been updated since this time. But for the purpose of the exam, these are the things that they like to focus on, even though some of them have been phased out. You should be able to, after this, install common peripheral devices. Most of them are plug and play, including input and output. Any questions before we get started? All right. BSNs we will be looking into on this will be customer focus, paying attention to what the customer needs, because a lot of times they call you, it would be because like a printer's not working, a mouse isn't working, a keyboard, monitor, and we are going to need to be able to handle these quickly and concisely, as well as taking care of the customer, making sure that they understand that our focus is on them and making sure that they are satisfied with our service rather than just solving the problem. You can be really good at just solving the problem, and the customer may not want to deal with you in the future because of the manner in which you solved it. So we have to try to focus on that and be attentive to our customers' needs. And as always, maintain a growth mindset, understanding that this industry is ever changing and evolving, and we need to stay on top of that and be aware of any changes that are coming down the line. So, get us started. What is a peripheral device? It's basically anything attached to that tower that's not physically that tower for the most part. So anything that you use to interact with the computer on any given basis, be it a monitor, keyboard, mouse, scanner, printer, webcam, even storage devices like external hard drives, USBs, speakers, all that kind of stuff, all of that is classified as a peripheral. It's anything outside of the main device itself. And it adds functionality to the computer, such as being able to see what you're interacting with, being able to hear the sounds coming through your computers, and being able to input commands into those computers. And peripheral devices are almost always external, and they are in addition to the base system. Any questions so far? Comments? Sure. Here we go. Here is a nice fun list of basic inputs. You know, your keyboard, gamepads, mouse, joysticks, scanners, webcams, digitizers. They do love asking about digitizers. So essentially, has anybody ever used a digitizer here? It's basically an old school, it's almost like a touch screen used a lot by graphics designer and artists and stuff like that to actually draw on the screen. It's not the same as an actual touch screen. It is far more sensitive and has been used for several years. Card readers are another one. Microphones, barcode readers, touchpads, all these are basic inputs. And then for security, you have biometric devices as well. So pretty big list. And a lot of these have different ways of connecting with the computer. Yes, Jack?
Are the digitizers the one that they use where you actually like do your signature?
That actually is not a digitizer, to my understanding. That is a Barbara, you have to help me. My brain just went blank. The opposite of capacitive touch.
Resistive.
Resistive touch. That is a resistive touch screen, and it operates off of pressure alone, and they have to be calibrated on a regular basis. Digitizers are a bit more sophisticated than that. So, DJ.
Well, are digitizers also used for like drawing on computers and stuff?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Because,
So
yeah,
it's a lot for, it's
of
like
text,
art, graphics design, 3D anim, 3D modeling and stuff like that. They will use digitizers because they're very precise.
Yeah, my younger sister, she goes to college for art, and she has like 3 of those just lying around her room. She uses her iPad mostly now, but yeah, it looked familiar.
Yeah, I mean the touch screens nowadays are starting to catch up to the level of sensitivity that you have in a digitizer. So yes, you can, like I think like the iPads and stuff like that, you have an accompanying pen that is proprietary, and the pen itself registers pressure really well as in the screen itself. And they're starting to get them to the point where they actually register the amount of pressure being applied. So they become a lot more functional in the actual, and will eventually be a good replacement for the digitizer. We're like on the cusp of that happening right now. Yes, Will.
Yes, Professor Kelly, a question about the card reader. I mean, I remember, do you know if they still use those? I remember from my experience in the workforce, I know my work experience, I remember they would see card reader, you would see like a definitely a biometric device and like webcam. But
well, this
card reader is still used? I never seen that before. I'm just curious.
Well, I mean, they do still use these, but I mean, card reader also is not, I mean, the one it's showing here is for the chip, like on a TWIC card or a military, I forget their actual term for the card that has a little gold chip in it. Jermaine, can you help me out with that?
CAT card.
CAT card, there you go.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, but, like TWIC cards, if you're going in and out of the port, they have these. You're starting to see them on credit cards now too. So yeah, these are still around, but the one they're showing here is more like a security device for identification and stuff like that.
Right.
Yes, they do still use these at the port. I am very certain that they do that. But also because of the chip reading technology, they're now using it for transactions too, like for small vendors.
Debit
Like
cards.
you would see at trade shows and stuff like that would have something like that they would attach to their computer, like the little square device they have, where you can actually read the magnetic strip, and then they have some where you can actually insert and read the chip. So yeah, these are still used, and actually in a greater capacity than they were before.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So that's mostly the card readers are mostly with the chip, which is called, what's it called again? Tech what?
Well, it's like the military calls them CAC cards. I know that they have different names for them in different places. For logistics, if you're going to go into the port, you have to have background checks done, and so they call it a TWIC card. That says you've had a background check done and you're authorized to be able to get into the ports and stuff like that. Biometric devices, more and more, we're seeing those being integrated into machines, like into your phones. Into laptops and stuff like that. They are not as often seen as a external peripheral device. Those are usually more embedded now. So that one's kind of going away. Let's see, any other?
Yeah, the biometric. Yeah, I have one in the MacBook Pro. They have, you have to
Yeah, you kind of run it's like a little bar that you run your finger along, versus this where you've got it placed on there and holding it there. Like your phones, it's like a place and hold as well. But yeah, those are becoming far more integrated than actual external devices.
Thank you.
No problem. All right, both input and output. MIDI enabled devices. If any of you ever are big into music, maybe DJ, if you've used one of these for mixing and stuff like that, MIDI devices are really good for things like that. Touchscreen TV or touchscreen monitors are becoming more common. KVMs. Does anybody know what KVM stands for? It's like keyboard. Video.
Keyboard, video, mouse.
There you go.
That's
Keyboard,
it.
video, mouse. That way you can have a single setup for, hooked up to your keyboard, and you can have that control multiple machines. So you could have a single monitor or a single desktop, and it controls several different monitors or several different machines. So these are very, very useful. Like if you ever see the TV walls where they have multiple TVs operating as if they're one, they're using something like a KVM. Smart TVs becoming increasingly more popular, have both input output. Some of them, like, I don't know if they still have them, but they used to have the cameras embedded on them where you can kind of wave and you can use your hand as a remote control and stuff like that. I know the Xbox had that for a little while. I'm not sure about PlayStation. So both input and output at the same time. Then we move to output devices that are strictly output. You would have things like speakers, monitors, if they are not specified as a touchscreen. If they just say monitor, it's not a touchscreen with regards to A+. If it is a touchscreen, they will tell you. So if it's not, and they just say monitor, they mean just an output device. And also printers. They didn't show it on here. People don't use them very often, but a fax machine, would that be considered an input or an output?
Both input and output.
Excellent, both. That is correct. All right, taking a look at the back of the computer. I know this one is a little bit outdated, but you still will run across this in offices. We'll have the same basic setup on the back of a computer. Most of us should recognize these two connectors up here, where we would typically attach our keyboard and mouse. And they call these the P2 connectors, not to be confused with the P1 power port. So right here, PS2 connector. That would be keyboard and mouse. Sometimes even a joystick would connect to a P2 connector. Then go down here, your standard USB ports. Can you tell me which generation this is in this computer? What version it is?
2.0.
2.0. It could also be a 1, because 1 was also black as well.
True.
But yeah, but typically it is going to be a 2.0. That is correct. Then over here, you have the Ethernet port, also called the network port. And that usually receives a connector that is called an RJ45, but we will go over that one a little bit later in the session.
Imagine how lost I would need to have like a very good memory, because it's all about memorization.
A good bit of it is, yes, is memorization.
You should.
So, all right, serial ports. Right here. And then this one is what's called the, this is a male port, so the pins stick out. So you actually can physically feel the pins if you touch on the actual connector. And then they have the LPT1 over here printer port, old school printer port. Most of these connectors that you're talking about, like that we're talking about here, what do they typically use now? We used to use all these different kinds of connectors. What do we typically use now for almost everything?
USB.
USB, and there are a few very good reasons for that. VGA, it's typically your monitors. The other term they would use for this is a DB15. DB stands for D sub miniature. And the 15 is the number of pins that are sticking out, or the number of pinholes you have. Same for this one up here. This one would also be a DB, but it is a DB male connector in the computer and would use a DB female port to plug into it from the wire. Did you have a question, Avery?
Yeah, I had to, for the serial port,
What you got?
I was gonna ask if that was the DB9 that you used to connect to it. But-
That might be. I can't count the pins from here, but it might be a DB9.
Okay, because I think I saw that in Friday's homework or something. But
Mhm.
is the LBT1 printer port a parallel port too? Is that what it's called?
Yes, I believe that is the, yeah, it's also
It
a
is.
parallel port.
Okay, okay.
Also DB what?
DB15.
I thought it was like DB 20 something.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
DB 25, I think.
Yes, DV25.
Okay. DB 25, yeah. So it's several different names, and you can almost kind of hang your hat on the DB is the amount of pins that it is. So you can just use that as your other way to look at it too. So
Yeah.
but like Kelly said, most of this is legacy because we use USB display ports and
Yeah,
the whole nine.
overwhelmingly, almost all peripherals are going to some form of USB connection.
Correct.
Almost never see this in nowadays. The joystick connector right here, which I think is a DB15 connector, game port. And then you have your audio in and out down here. Don't necessarily need to memorize the colors and what they go with. It just helps when you're in a rush hooking things up. If you can just do a quick visual check and know, which one goes with which. But like many other things, a lot of these devices are going either USB, Bluetooth, or some form of universal connector. Yes, Will.
Would it still, you still see like a little sign like that that will say microphone?
Yes.
It sounds a
Well,
bit
it'll
odd.
have here. Let me
Would it
erase
say
the speaker.
speakers. Would it just say like you would just see a regular audio jack, right? It's like
But you'd have these three symbols here.
yeah. Okay,
That's-
so you'll still see the little microphone. Okay.
Yeah, you'll see that, you'll see that, you'll see that. And then typically they'll have the colors as well. What's not on here that you are seeing more and more of that we have had on the previous presentation? Go ahead, DJ.
HDMI.
I'm waiting on that. I appreciate it.
In the audio only.
Optical.
Yeah. The what?
ASAP.
Optical.
Optical. There you go, Jermaine. Excellent. So yeah, the optical, but yeah, you are right, DJ, on the back of a computer, you would more often see HDMIs now. What else might you see?
The coaxial, the SPDA.
Yeah, that's the optical one that Jermaine was just talking about.
I didn't mean to
USB
mute you,
3.
William, but yeah.
Display port.
There you go, Steve. Display port. There's another one. HDMI. Can you think of any others?
Thunderbolt 3.
Thunderbolt. That's a good one.
As video.
Sometimes.
It's pretty much any type of data.
So these are still making additions to the bag. Some of these larger ones, like the printer ports and all that stuff, that's kind of going away. It takes up too much real estate, and they have much better means of communicating with the printers than using these particular ports. All right. Let me saw my scribbles here. There we go. USBs. One of the most common devices that we have together. And like I was saying, there is a very good reason why they like USBs, because it's very widely accepted for one, and you can chain together, link together off of a hub from a single USB port on the back of your device. You can chain together 127 devices together through that one, and they can all talk. Technically speaking, that it allows for that. Some other technologies, I think you can only chain up to, like FireWire, I think you can get up to 6. That's about your max. But USBs, you can chain up to 127. They might ask that. So the devices are also considered what is called hot swappable. Does anybody know what that means?
Does that mean you can like take them out easier without like a lot of problems?
You're on the right path.
Take them out while power is in the system.
Warmer. Hot swappable is basically you can pull it out at any time, it doesn't matter. So, and why I said you're getting warmer, Jermaine, instead of that's dead on, is because there's also, well, first let's go to what's cold swappable mean?
You have to literally go on the system and press eject and then unplug whatever it tells you to unplug. Like a flash drive. It actually tells you to eject the flash drive before you take the flash drive out.
You just found the midway point. That's warm swappable. So the power doesn't have to be turned off, but as long as you indicate to the system that I want to eject this like a flash drive, and then you can eject it, that's considered warm swappable. Hot swappable, you don't have to do any of that. You can literally just grab it, pull it out, you're fine. Then you have cold swappable, which basically means everything needs to be shut down and then you can remove it. So those are the 3 different stages of swappable devices: hot, warm, and cold. So USBs, typically they say, yes, you do want to go in and initiate to the system, you know, hey, I want to eject this so you can pull it out. But they technically consider them to be hot swappable, where you don't necessarily have to do this, although it is still recommended. All right, any questions so far? All right. USB operates off of 4 wires within the actual sleeve. 2 for power, 2 for communication. And then there are a various amount of standards that operate under USB. We have the original 1.1, which is low speed, otherwise called full speed, because that's what they considered it when they first came out with them. Then they moved up to the next iteration, USB 2.0, which is high speed. That is also still considered the black port. If you look in it and see it as black, the fastest it could be is 2.0, and they call that high speed USB. Then you get to 3.0, which is the blue connectors when you look into them, and they call that super speed. And then we get to 3.1, which I believe is teal. And they called that super speed USB 10 gigabits per second. Here it is kind of broken down in a nice little graph. You should see this exact same graph in your book. I would recommend you tabbing that page and reviewing these standards, because they do have a tendency to come up. And they will ask from time to time about not only generation. No, they don't get into this, excuse me, but the maximum cable length that you can have. So 1 and 3 share the same, it's 3 meters. And then 2 allows for up to 5. And then understand the speeds that you're allotted with each generation. And as you can see, there are major jumps between USB 1.0 and 1.1. You get 12 megabits per second. Go to version 2, you get 480 megabits per second. That is a huge jump between generations. And then from 2 to 3, you go from 480 megabits per second to 5 gigabits per second. And then from 3 to 3.1, it doubles. So you get 10 gigabits per second for 3.1. So for these, the 3 generations, know your maximum cable lengths and your maximum speeds. Obviously, this is maximum speed under optimal conditions. Basically, nothing else running on the line. Everything else is, perfect conditions. This is what you could achieve. Any questions so far? And just for fun, we also got to get into the other side of those particular connectors. Most times you have the USB little square or rectangular one that you plug into the back of your computer. The one on the other end doesn't necessarily look the same way. So we actually have to be aware as to those different types of connectors as well. So the type A male connector is the one that everybody's used to seeing that would go into the back of the computer. That's this one right here, the rectangular one with the bar on one side and then the open space on the other. Beyond that, you would have the USB B male connectors, which is this one. It's kind of square, but it has a little bit of rounding up on the top. These are typically used with printers, larger devices to connect to. I had a rowing machine that actually used USB B connector as well. Scanners, the all-in-ones for sure. And even today, you will typically see printers using this particular type of connector. And it is considered a version 1 because the inside is white, so they would consider that a version 1. Then the next generation you saw was the USB Mini B, which is this one right here. There is a little bit better front-on view of this one in a couple slides, so we'll show you. This one was typically used with, I think Nintendo DS used it as a power connector. Camcorders, digital cameras, stuff like that uses this Mini. The Micro B is probably the most popular. You see that one pretty much everywhere. Bluetooth headphones, the Android-based phone systems used it up until they started using the USB-C. It is, for portable devices, probably the most popular connector you will see. But again, in a couple slides, we'll have a better front-on view of this, so you can get a better visual of it because these pictures aren't necessarily the best. Any questions so far on this? Nope. All right. All right, continuing on. Here is the USB, the Micro A connector again. It has 5 pins. And then you have the USB 3.0 A male, and it looks similar, but the interior is blue. And it actually, if you look, you can see it kind of kicking up a little more right here, rather than just having the straight square. It actually rises up a bit on top of that and allows for a much faster throughput. And this would be on more modern printers and scanners as well. The one below it, final one that they show in this particular one, has a front on view. Again, this is a terrible picture. It's hard to see. And this is the Micro B. You typically would see this with hard drives, larger size hard drives that you want a really fast throughput on. And it almost looks like two connectors that were essentially fused together, because there's almost a depression that goes down and then it creates almost a secondary connector. But in the next picture, we will, or the next slide, we will have better pictures of these. Here we go. So here's the front on view of them. Makes a little bit easier to see. So you have the A, rectangular look with the bar across one side, open space on the other, meaning you can only go in one way. So if you try to reverse it and put it in, it won't fit. Then you have the USB-B front on. It's almost a square, but it's got a little bit rounded top, printer, scanner, stuff like that. And this is the Micro B we were talking about, where it looks like two little connectors attached. See how good my skills are here. You got this little depression right here. So it looks like two little actual, like a micro connector, and like two micros essentially fused together so that they can go in. And also, this one is also can only go in one way. Almost all of these are set up so that they can only be docked in one position. They cannot be reversed and put in. Here's the micro, which is the one that was used on most cell phones, mobile devices, and all that up until recently with the adoption of the USB Type-C. The mini with DSL cameras, camcorders, things of that nature. And that has been phased out. That one was phased out relatively quickly with the adoption of the micro. And then you have the Apple proprietary lightning cable, which is also reversible. And then you have the USB Type-C, which is a 24-pin reversible. They love asking about the USB Type-C. So if ever you hear 24-pin reversible plug, they're speaking about the USB-C. So I've had a few questions come up on that particular one alone, just because it was a budding technology when the exam was written. It's become a lot more widely accepted now. But if you hear those particular things, 24-pin reversible, it should immediately guide you towards USB Type-C connector. And it allows for a very fast throughput, and currently is the technology that almost everybody is gravitating towards. I believe even Apple's gravitating towards it.
Now, I asked, have you, any of you, out of all the ones that you see right now, there should be like only one that you probably haven't seen personally, and that's probably Micro B. But for the most part, if you on a cell phone for the last 10 years or a digital camera over the last 10 plus years, you would have been dealing with one of these cables here. The micro, the mini for sure. If you are an Android person, you got away from Lightning, but it was micro probably. So, and now it's Type-C. Correct me if I'm wrong. If are we seeing this for the first time, or are these just kind of like a visual and a name now being put to a cable that you've already had in your home?
I seen Micro B because my external hard drive for my PlayStation used Micro B.
Yeah, I got a
Yeah.
small
Yeah, same for
hard
me.
drive right here that uses a micro B as well. First time I've actually dealt with it. But mini, I sold cameras, and micro, I sold so many cameras, it makes no sense. So those were just common power or connectors transfer cables to put the pictures into the computer. But also for cell phones, it was just when the cable war was going on, when every company felt like they needed to have their own cable for all the wrong reasons, financial, they would have a new phone and a new different type of cable to go with it. So now when you go to the store, you got to buy an accessory. So all of that kind of has subsided, but these are very common, and I would hope to have seen at some point. Now you just know the name of it, and you can lock that in now.
But also, I mean, consumers have gotten to the point where they get, you know, like if you strictly use a proprietary cable, more and more consumers are kind of gravitating away from that because it limits you. You know, I mean, Apple was doing that for a while because they wanted everything in-house. They wanted you not to just invest in the iPhone. They wanted the iPad, the Apple TV, all that fun stuff, everything, all the same product. But people, we don't operate that way. You know, if you use an iPhone, you may still use a Microsoft computer, and you want to be able to have those two things communicate really well together. And so you're starting to see more and more these companies are kind of jumping on the bandwagon with USB-C because it is a good and superior technology. And it seems to be currently, unless something changes here real soon, the wave of the future for almost all peripheral devices going that route. You'll just see older USB 3s on the computers for a while, just because people still have these devices laying around and want to continue to use them. But more and more, you'll see, like, instead of having 3 USB 3s and 1 USB-C on your computer, that'll quickly reverse. You know, have 3 USB-Cs and maybe 1 USB 3 on there.
I just bought a Type-C charger because all of the new iPhones have been coming with the Type-C lightning cable, but the only way we can use it if you plug it up to your computer that has Type-C on it. So I just recently bought a charger, and it's highly coveted in the house right now. So everybody wants it because they know that's the newest cable. So
yeah, I mean, I can't tell you how many of those, like the USB 3 and USB 2 plug adapters that we have here. Yeah, like, and we're just now starting to get the USB-Cs. I think we have like 2 of those in the house.
Yep.
All right, questions so far. Yes, Scott. He's asking if any of these have gone obsolete. Well, with each subsequent generation, the prior generation is essentially becoming obsolete, but they make the current ones backwards compatible with them. All right, FireWire. IEEE 1394 is the other name you will see for FireWire. Marvin, you're moving my slides, dude. Here we go. I got it.
My fault.
So FireWire, otherwise known as IEEE 1394, you may see it mentioned as either one of those. This is a technology that is rapidly getting phased out. I was kind of sad. I particularly like FireWire. I had several hard drives that were FireWire. I found it very, very robust technology. And they typically have either a 4 or 6 pin connector. They have a really good fast throughput, 400 and 800 megabits per second, which is pretty good for a hard drive. And you could daisy chain up to 16. Okay, I remembered incorrectly. I thought it was 6, but you could daisy chain up to 16 together, which is great if you're doing a RAID array with your hard drives or something along those lines. The only thing is maximum cable length, only 4.5 meters, which seems like a lot of distance, but it's really not. The 800 corrected that with 100 meter maximum cable length. And I think the 800 allows for 63 devices to be daisy chained, but that still pales in comparison to USB, which allows for how many devices to be daisy chained together?
127.
127.
There we go,
Okay.
127. We had a lot chimed in on that. I like that.
Okay.
All right. Here is a look at what the FireWire looks like. This typically would be the one going in the back of your computer. This would be the one going into the actual hard drive. And this one almost looks like an arrow, if you can see it. And this one is like a square with a little indentation taken out of it on the bottom. So if you see something like that head on, you know you're looking at a FireWire connector. It is going to be rare that you will see computer or desktops or computers that actually have FireWire connectors anymore. I know the most recent one I purchased like a couple of years ago does not have them on there anymore. And I think I had 2 or 3 FireWire connections on my computer that I had before that. So it was a really highly used technology 10 years ago, and now it's pretty much completely gone. Infrared. I think we've all used this at some point in our life. If you ever use a remote control on your television, it is considered outdated, but it is still heavily used with regards to like using your television, your stereo, and stuff like that. Although many of these devices are actually bumping up to Bluetooth connections rather than utilizing infrared, which is kind of nice because then you don't have to have the absolute direct line of sight. You can still pass through some walls. So if you wanted to keep your personal electronics, like to make it look cleaner so that they're not all out in the open and visible, you could do that where you couldn't before with infrared, because if you didn't have the direct line of sight or have an infrared repeater, it wouldn't function.
And you also can use an app to run that device as opposed to a remote at all. You just have some type of app like a Fire Stick TV app or your Apple TV, because that's all going to be running off Bluetooth as opposed to infrared.
Fair
And
point.
Kelly, we used to have a wire that you could tape to the front of the infrared signal, and you can hang it in certain places to, like you just said, to make it so you can make it a cleaner setup. That was the trick back in the day. But I really, really, really am happy about the Bluetooth option, because that infrared kind of, it has is obviously known issue. So, and it's always distance and line of sight.
Absolutely.
Next question.
Yeah, it is line of sight. Your maximum transmission distance is 15 meters, or excuse me, 5 meters or 15 feet. My apologies. And fast speed infrared is 4 megabytes per second, or megabits per second, excuse me. So they actually did use infrared for a little while to do data transfers, like say from a laptop to a hard drive and stuff like that, or from one device to another. You could do that. It still can be done today, but it is very, very slow. So upgrading to like Bluetooth or ad hoc Wi-Fi, something like that, that is a much better medium for transferring larger amounts of information. Typically would not rely on infrared, something like that. Yes, DJ.
Well, I was wondering, I remember there was a certain Samsung phone. I'm pretty sure it was the 3, but yeah, there was a one of the Samsungs that was able to just control like older TVs, and I was wondering if that was like infrared.
Yes,
that they put in it.
They had a built-in infrared emitter and reader on it. And the thing is you could also use that I guess the technology was originally so that you could put that phone next to your computer, like your desk, your laptop or whatever, and you could talk to your laptop from your phone. But as a result of that, as that technology is already built in, you could have an app to talk to an older TV and, you know, control the TVs. I know a lot of people would do that when they would go to sports bars or something like that. If they didn't have the game on that they wanted, they would actually just dial it in on their phone and change the channel to whatever they wanted to watch. So
Yeah, they
it
do
is
that at
there.
school.
It is there. It is considered an outdated technology, but it does still exist. People do still use it for various things. Just understand it is very slow throughput. It has a very narrow transmission window, and it can't go very far. So like it has a lot of limitations, which is why people are, you know, use it very rarely. All right. Bluetooth technology essentially operates off of radio frequencies, and it is a wonderful thing that can connect to multiple devices at any given time and has a range close to 10 meters. That is 10 meters under optimal conditions, no walls, infrastructure, anything in between you and the device. Typically, it tends to be much shorter. If there are multiple people using that same bandwidth in the area as you, that will limit it even further. So it's 10 meters under optimal conditions and 2.4 gigahertz band. And I think it can transmit up to, I think it says, yeah, 3 megabits per second for version 2.0. So it's not something you would use for like transmitting high def video, but for something that's going to have not a lot of data involved, like, you know, what keys are you hitting on your keyboard? You know, remember we were saying the mouse itself is a very simple device from a programming perspective. So just knowing where that mouse is on the screen versus the two different clicks, that's not a whole lot of data to be transmitted. And then low grade audio to your headphones. It's also not a huge amount of bandwidth being chewed up there. So we will get into Bluetooth a little bit more as we go further along. This is just kind of an overview introducing you to it. But the key takeaways are the range and the throughput. So sorry, range, bandwidth, and throughput. So 10 meters, 2.4 gigahertz, which that will come up again too, 2.4 gigahertz. And then 3 megabits per second, excuse me. Questions so far? All right. PS2 or mini DINs. Typically, you will not hear it respond or referred to as a mini DIN. They will typically use the PS2 connection, and almost exclusively will they use that in terms of keyboard and mouse connectors. There we go. Device connector or serial port. This one viewed is the DB9 or D sub miniature 9-pin connector. Over here we have the male connector, and then on this side is what is considered the female connector, depending on which device you're connecting to.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry not to interrupt. Which one was the male? Which one was the female?
The one with the pin sticking out is the male, and the ones with the holes for the pins is the female.
Got it.
Kelly, I call that growth because I was about to, it's growth. So much that can be said. Right,
Hey.
This is growth. This is growing. Go ahead, Scott.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say the DB9 pin, to answer your question. Doesn't that connect for the Wi-Fi or the internet?
I believe that they did for a while use the DB9 for modems, like original dial-up modems.
Oh,
That was a connector they did use.
Look at Scott with the fun fact.
I knew it had something to do with the internet, and so because I remember seeing that before with old school
Yeah,
computer.
that was I believe it was this connector, the female connector that they used to hook up the computer for that one,
All right, thank you, sir.
from the actual modems. All right, DB25 parallel port. DB means what?
25 pins. I
No,
mean,
no,
oh,
what
no,
does DB stand for?
The D sub. not bad.
D sub miniature, very good. And you know, I mean, if you put these on their side, it is a rhombus, but it looks almost like a D if you like stand it up on its side. We got one piece is long, one is short, and then they have the two angled connections here. So it would be pretty much for a D sub miniature. And then here you have representations of the male and female connectors, male up top. Here's the female connector. And this would typically be used for printers or whatnot. So any questions with regards to D sub miniatures?
Yeah, I just have one question. What about DB9? Can it be just like console cable? Can we?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've had you had video game controllers that could hook up to it. Old consoles, yes.
Other
looks
than- yeah. I just want to say to access switches or to configure switch, so we can act.
Yes. Rather than using what's called a rollover network cable, the old switches would use these. Yes, you are correct. And then they moved to rollover cables, and then finally to crossover cables.
Okay, thanks.
So no, you are correct on that. Sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying.
Okay.
All right. RJ45. Probably one of the more common you will see going around nowadays. It is the replacement for the RJ11, which was the old telephone line or old telephone connector that had 4 pins sticking out of it. So this one replaced it, has 8. And it's a little bit broader, allows for a much faster data throughput. And when you hear somebody, Marvin, where'd he go? Oh, all right, Marvin Grabber. When you hear somebody referring to old telephone lines, they will call it POTS for short, POTS, which is plain old telephone service. And that would be the RJ11. Let me see if it's the next slide, just to be sure. Yeah, here you go. So you have the RJ11, which is the old telephone connector, 4-pin connection. And then you have the more modern network cable, which has an 8-pin connection. We're going to pause it right here.
Got you.
Cool, thank you. So most common network cable you will see is the RJ45 or register jack 45. It is the typical network 8-pin connector you see here. It's slightly wider than the older RJ11 or phone cable connector you would use. Throughout the course of this, you do need to get comfortable using the technical terms for these particular devices, not just call it an Ethernet port or you know, an Ethernet connector. It is an RJ45. And then instead of a serial port, you would use like DB15, DB25, something along those lines. So getting a little more comfortable using these terms on a regular basis. And just show this one, the RJ11, the old phone cable, telephone line, 4-pin connection. What is the other term I used for this right before we went on break? whenever they speak for old telephone lines? What is the term they will use?
POTS,
POTS. Very good. What does that stand for?
plain old telephone service.
Very good. Very good. Plain old telephone service, or POTS. And the typical network connection for that will be this RJ11 4-pin connector. All right, installing input-out peripheral devices. Thankfully, for the most part, nowadays, it's pretty much plug and play. You go ahead and read the manufacturer's directions just to be sure, although I'm fairly certain almost nobody does. But that is recommended, so we know exactly what we're getting into. You hook it up, make sure the drivers are provided with the device. Sometimes they're actually physically on the device. Sometimes your computer has them stored in an actual folder where they keep all of the devices that they have drivers for. Does anybody remember what that particular folder is called? There's an acronym and what that acronym stands for. This is like any computer out of the box. It has a list of devices that it knows and will work with, and it keeps it all in a folder. What is the name of that folder?
I'm just gonna go for I know you mentioned it before, but I think it wouldn't it be called like the storage folder or yeah, storage folder.
You're getting cut. You're on the right track.
Dang.
Anybody
All right,
think of it?
Driver folders?
That's where you would keep all the drivers, yes. This is a tough one. I did only mention it one time.
Miss Jackie was about to say something.
No?
Okay.
All right. So on a computer, they will keep all of these particular drivers in something called the HCL, or hardware compatibility list. And they will put in essentially a big chunk of drivers of the most common devices so that when they are hooked up, they would have functionality. And a lot of times they will use generic drivers. So like if you bought an HP, 5370 printer, they would give a driver for an HP 5000 series. So that would give you basic functionality for the printer to be able to get it up and online. And then when you actually get in and start looking at the device, it'll say, you have an update. And then you can go and you grab the update and it gives you all the detailed drivers downloaded so that you can use all the bells and whistles that are associated with that particular device, not just the generic drivers to get basic functionality. Any questions so far with that?
That was hardware compatibility, what?
List.
List, okay.
So HCL, hardware compatibility list.
He says the folder where all the drivers, devices compatible with the computers are located.
Yeah, the devices and drivers that would be compatible with that particular computer or motherboard or CPU or whatever, that would all be stored in the hardware compatibility list. And it's just the most common devices. And sometimes it will be just generic drivers for those particular companies because they will use the same basic drivers. And then you would just go do an update after that to get all the detailed drivers. Questions so far? All right. Now we get to start picking on people.
Scott, what's A, sir? What's A?
A is the USB 3.0A.
You're not looking at the
Oh, no.
picture.
Look right here.
Apologies. You are absolutely correct. That is the give me a second. 2, 2, 4, 6, 8. I know what it is because that's for the internet, the telephone. The RS511, correct? I mean RJ11. Sorry, I hate my handwriting.
It's a little bigger than RJ11.
In that case, then RJ45.
Yeah, those right here.
Okay, RJ45.
There you
So
go.
you gave me the government name. What do we call it? What do we call it on the street?
Oh, the oh great. Now I'm going blank on the name. It's the
Yeah,
internet one. Yeah, internet one.
it's for the
Sure.
internet, but it's Ethernet. We call it Ethernet.
There you go. Yeah.
Or network cable
I knew I'd get it somewhere.
like Kelly is putting up there. But RJ45 is the name that the test will be typically expressing it as. So
All right, popcorn it over to somebody.
Sorry, I was on mute. Let's get to my boy William.
All right, William. What is B?
All right, B. Let me see if I can look at that real quick. All right. Man, that's a that's a different, that doesn't look, man, is that a USB, bro? I mean, it's like, because the other one,
It is a USB.
because it can't be D, because D has like a funny looking shape, so it has to be B, USB, right?
USB. What generation is it?
It has to be a USB 1.
We agree?
Nah, USB 3. Scott Pena says USB 3.0, but
There you go.
yeah, all right. Thank you. All right, so USB 3.0.
All right, Scott or William, can you popcorn it over to somebody? And I will just have one additional requirement.
Yes, well,
The requirement would be who you popcorn it to has to have their camera off.
has to have the camera off. I can't see, like,
Pick someone who doesn't have their camera on.
all right, let me, I can't, it doesn't let me view the other participants.
Oh, it doesn't?
Not because it's, I think, sharing screen, but yeah, I'll pick it up.
Let's see. There, does that
Okay.
help?
Yes. My boy, Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr.
All right, Steve. Can you please tell us what number C is? Oh, it took me all the annotations. C. There, Steve.
let's try again, William. Pick somebody else.
All right. I think I saw another name without the video image on top of my head. I think it was Carlos T.
All right, Carlos. What is number C, please?
I think is that a type C connector?
This right here.
If you squint your eyes, Carlos, you probably can see some writing on top of it.
Oh, wait, no, that's a USB 2.
Well, it's got like a little bit of a point on this side, a little bit of an indentation on there. To give a little bit of a hint, like Marvin was saying, right about here. Two different names we use for it.
Avery says really hot. I like that. Smoking.
The the technology we don't really use much anymore, but it was popular about 4 or 5 years ago.
Get somebody to help you, Carlos. Tag one of your
Phone a
classmates.
friend. Phone a friend.
Okay. I guess I'm going with Ashton.
FireWire.
Also known as.
Yeah, I don't know what this one street name is.
Well, it's another.
I belong to the
government name.
sidewalks.
It's another
IEEE
government name actually,
1394.
but FireWire is more so the easy name for it. IEEE 1394, which is written actually on it. If you guys could like squint and see it, and it comes in A and B.
1394 on there.
Comes in A and B. But good job, Ashton. Go ahead and pick someone else for us.
Sorry, I was muted. Chris.
Chris, look alive,
Alrighty,
man.
Chris.
Letter D.
D.
T2 connector. T2.
T2. All right, what is
That's what Kelly called it initially. He left out a letter.
Yeah, I did.
PS2.
There you go.
He actually did say PS2.
Yeah, he eventually said it, but he left it off initially. I was like, P2? P2, what Kelly was? What's going on, Kelly? But he fixed it. Typically does.
So what based on the color, what would it be used for?
That is good.
I'm gonna say speaker. No,
look at it. Look at it, Chris. It's on top of there. If you can see it.
Oh, I see that.
Right there.
Mouse?
No.
Query.
Look really rectangular over there. Got a lot of letters on it.
Cannot make that
It's
out.
the opposite of the mouse.
Keyboard.
There you go. And this
Eventually I would say keyboard.
This is an adapter. So I mean, this actually isn't the connector itself. It's actually just an adapter. So what connector would we typically see on the back end of it? What do you think?
USB.
There you go, USB. So if you have an older computer, did not have enough USB ports, you could actually use an adapter to backwards compatibility to a PS2 port. But good job, Chris. Popcorn it over to somebody, please.
Preferably a young lady. They've been dodging the questions.
I volunteer, Miss Jackie.
All right.
Worked out.
Really? Okay, I know it's network cable, and I forgot, but it's.
You could use it for network, though you may not be pleased with the
speed.
The speed
at all. Like AOL. Before we had the internet, how do we communicate?
Phone.
Oh, well, we getting somewhere.
It's a phone cable, I know that, but don't it have another name?
Yeah, it does.
Yes.
It does.
Yes.
Smaller than
Amber's got her hand
Oh,
raised.
the
to help you.
RJ11.
There you go. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. RJ11. Or
All right.
POTS, plain old telephone service.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Popcorn it over to somebody, Jackie, for the last one.
Miss Amber.
The micro USB.
You are correct.
Good job. Good job.
Right out of the gate. Beautiful. I love it. Yes, that is a USB micro. All right. Any questions with regards to these?
That's a micro or mini?
I believe that is a mini. Excuse me.
Well, look at that.
I just,
Way to, good catch, Ashton.
Yeah, you got
It has the
the
hat on.
yeah, the up swipe. Yep, mini. And then micro is the real tiny one. But excellent job, everyone. Working together.
I just got one quick question.
What you got?
Just want to clarify the PS2, which is obviously the mouse and the keyboard, and the color is green and purple. So, like, I guess like a law, that's always going to be the colors, right? Green and purple for the mouse and
Typically
the keyboard.
speaking, though,
Or
I
the
have
colors.
seen like most of the ones I had, they were just gray.
Oh,
So, but yeah, they did color code them for quite some time, being this like this teal, and then the purple and the green or whatever. So,
okay.
quick reference, that's what they'll look like.
You probably won't see them too often in the field anymore, Scott. But yeah, they had a standard color, and it matched the color of the device that you were plugging into to help when you're handling cables in a tight space. So they try to make it easier for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, we need to play this game one more time. So, Miss Amber, since you answered the last one, can you please popcorn it over to somebody?
Jermaine.
All righty, Jermaine.
Yellow.
Hello. What is A?
Those are the ports for the keyboard and the mouse. The purple is for the mouse and the greens for the keyboard, if I'm right.
You did A.
No, lies. The purple is for the keyboard and the greens for the mouse.
They are hybrid because they like the big dogs like.
That is correct. Also called PS2, just to actually give it its official
Oh.
name.
Yeah, PS2 connections. My apologies.
A.
Jermaine, give it to somebody else. Matter of fact, you won't. Frankie, I'm gonna give it to you. B.
All right. USB. That's USB ports.
Yeah,
Easy.
USB ports to the left and the Ethernet on the right.
That's easy. So Frank, because that was so easy, you got C2.
Is serial.
Say LPT1 printer ports.
Yeah, serial.
Serial, this one. Why is both of them?
Says
Say VGA.
yeah, VGA says serial.
If you look at it really tight, C looks different than I don't know why Kelly didn't put a letter by it.
Yeah, he missing a letter.
See the
You want to say
those two
C
separate.
what? Go ahead and say that, Frank, because I want to make sure we distinguish it right quick.
Is C the serial port dial-up modem?
That's it. Serial dial-up modem port. That's it for C. Amber, what is the one right below it?
The VGA.
I like it. I like it. So we're gonna we got that locked in. That is correct. Thank you, Amber. DJ, DENF.
D is the is D the line in?
It is.
E is obviously the speakers, right?
Okay, yep.
And F is microphone.
I like it. Good job there. Who Mogus, give me J.
J is 50 pin DB 50.
That is correct, but then what off the choices that you have, which one would you use for it? You only got 3 choices left.
That is for game port or
I like
joystick?
it, sir. I like it.
Yeah, but I have a question. Is the D is for lining or for speaker?
Oh, okay. That has to be
Speaker.
No, because E is also
Yellow would be a line in,
right, and that's D.
because that's, yeah, that would be a line in.
That is line in, right? Because headphones can work as speakers because it's an output. It can work as speakers as well. And there's no headphone option here, just speakers.
Yeah.
So it's serving the same purpose.
So which one are we on, Marvin? Because we have I, J, and H left.
We just got I and H.
Right. Yep. So who's up for I?
Can I do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going with that. I is the ether port, correct? Wait.
I?
No. Sorry, let me take that back. I is the printer port.
Also known as?
H should be the ether port. LPT 1.
LPT 1.
Yes.
There you go.
Oh,
that leaves us with H, which is either our Ethernet or network port. Again, this will be dropped in Slack and the chat just so that you can kind of go over it again, get familiar with the appearance of it and what each of these little ports are. Yes, Miss Amber.
Were you asking for H? Well, you already named.
It was the only one left, so we went with H.
Okay.
So it was the Ethernet or network cable. So. And that should wrap us up here. After this T session, we should be able to define the role, purpose, and types of peripherals you would come across on a regular basis, compare and contrast various connection interfaces and their characteristics and purpose, identify connector types and associated cables, and install common peripheral devices, including input and output devices. Do you have any questions with regards to this technical session? Yes, William.
Just maybe for future reference, somebody will announce it, or maybe our supervisor, somebody will say, hey guys, no longer will this be used ever again, or something like that. Will that ever happen? Or we get like hey, they're eventually, or we just let time go by until eventually you realize nobody's really using it anymore, right? Or
well, it's kind of, you start to see them you start to see that technology being phased out less than, you know, because if it's very heavily adopted, they're likely not going to phase it out anytime soon. If it's something that it's only kind of a niche thing where, you know, maybe 2-3% of the market is using it, and there is other technologies that are comparable or better, you will see them start to phase that technology out. You know, like we're going to see USB 3s, which is the blue USBs. We're going to see USB 3 and USB 3.1. We're going to see those around for a long time because it's still a really functional technology. It's still being used really readily now. USB Type-C is still kind of in its infancy and becoming more and more adopted. So that technology is on the rise. Now, 5 years from now, you'll probably see USB-C start to get faded out, or USB 3s faded out. And like I was saying, on the back of a computer, instead of having 5 USB 3 ports, you'll have, you know, 1, maybe 2 USB 3 ports, and then you'll have 4 or 5 USB type Cs.
Right,
So
okay.
you'll start to see an inversion of that technology over time. And that's
good to know.
kind of how that phase out happens.
Thanks, Professor.
No problem. Any other questions? All right, I think we can end the recording there.